This video and all of its contents, including any opinions expressed by the narrator, are strictly for entertainment purposes only, and is not intended in any way as a substitute for professional services and consultation from a licensed therapist, doctor, attorney, or other licensed professional service provider. Each person must make their own life decisions, and those decisions are theirs. Welcome back to Find Your Alpha. I'm back at you this week with another terrific video story. This one is titled, Fiancée's business trip was actually a secret rendezvous with her ex. And she says, nothing happened, I swear. Well, we'll see about that. Now let's get into this story and see what went on here. He starts off and he says, it's been a little over a year since this happened, but I still haven't fully recovered yet. At the time, I, 28, had been with my fiancée Britt, 27, a total of 3 years, engaged 5 months. Our first meeting was like a movie scene where two people lock eyes across a crowded room, strike up a conversation, then ride off into the sunset. That's sort of what happened to us, but without the fairy tale ending. Now right here, a guy talking like that sends me a signal that this guy is kind of a softie, he's kind of a romantic type. So just take that into consideration as we go through this story. One evening, the YMCA I belonged to held a happy hour mixer. It was an event to raise money for an expansion they were doing. There was a cover charge to enter, which included appetizers, drinks, and live music. It sounded like fun, and since I was relatively new in town, I thought it would be a good opportunity to meet people. I was there by myself while everyone else seemed to be with someone. You know the awkward feeling you get when you're in a situation like that? That's how I felt that night. I ate a few appetizers and used up my drink tickets and was going to call it a night when I spotted her. We locked eyes and she gave me a smile, so I decided to approach. Now here I gotta hand it to him. I say hats off to you because that's what you should do. If you see a woman who you think is attractive and she gives you a smile, walk over and talk to her. Don't be a coward. We started talking and discovered she was there alone too and was feeling just like I was. I got her number and we soon started dating. Things moved fast, but it felt natural. Hold on there, cowboy, hold on. Those early weeks of our relationship were intense, and I'll admit right here I fell hard. So hard I contemplated asking her to marry me the night of our 6-month anniversary, but backed out last minute on the advice of my old man. Well, good, your old man talked some sense into you. Thankfully I did, but even so, the eventual outcome ended up being the same. She and I lived close by each other and were spending nearly every night together, so after a year of dating, we decided to move in together. That's rushing things. You decide to do that after just a year? I think you need to wait a little longer than that. He says it felt like the right time and we were very happy. After a year of living together, I asked her to marry me and she said yes. Our families were fully supportive and very happy for us. We weren't rich, but were earning decent money for people our ages. Finances weren't a problem as neither of us are spending types. Well, that's good. He says we each contributed to a joint account from which we paid our monthly expenses like rent, insurances, and utilities. We also had separate 401k accounts and maxed out our contributions in order to get the full match from our employers. Again, very good, very smart. We were doing things right, and I thought this was how being in a healthy relationship would feel. Looking back now, there were no obvious signs. She hid things well and covered her tracks, so I had no clue about what had been going on in the final days of our relationship. The week it all ended, she had a business trip. So here's another one, going on a business trip. She told me about it a week before, so it wasn't a surprise. Trips like this weren't out of the ordinary as we both attended them a few times a year for our jobs. It was an in-state trip, so she'd be driving. She left from work mid-afternoon on Wednesday and planned to return home before 5 on Friday. Thinking back to the days before her trip, the only thing that stood out was that she was extra nice to me. She took extra care of me in the bedroom and told me multiple times how she dreaded being away those 2 nights. Before she left, she went shopping to make sure the pantry was fully stocked with my favorite snacks, and prepared special meals for me for the night she'd be away. Well, that was nice of her. While Britt was gone, she called me on her breaks and every evening, and we exchanged texts throughout the day. Friday came, and I was looking forward to her coming home. We had spoken early that morning, and she advised that she should make it home before 4 as her meetings were going to finish up around noon. Then at around 3 o'clock, I got a frantic call from her. Her voice was shaking as she told me she had been in an accident. I immediately panicked and thought the worst. She quickly told me that she and the other driver were fine, but her car wasn't drivable. I thought to myself, thank God, and asked where she was at that moment. I told her I'd leave from work and drive straight there to pick her up. She told me she was in the car with her mother, and they were driving back to her parents' house. She said she called her mother because she knew I was busy and didn't want to bother me. I told her to never worry about that and to always call me in these situations regardless of what I had going on. She promised she would do that. We talked more, and I told her I'd drive down to her parents' place that evening to pick her up. She told me not to do that, as she didn't want me driving that far after working a full day. She said I should go home and relax, then come down in the morning after getting a good night's sleep, so that's what I ended up doing. When you're reading through this story, you're thinking, wow, she's a very thoughtful person. She went out and bought groceries for him. She prepared meals. Now she's telling him, hey, don't drive down and pick me up tonight. Why don't you get a good night's rest and come down in the morning? Sounds pretty nice, doesn't it? Well, we'll see. We talked again several times that evening. When I asked about the accident, she told me she didn't want to talk about it right then because it upset her. She said she'd tell me everything in the morning when I got there. While lying in bed that night, I replayed the day's events in my head. I questioned why she'd call her mother first instead of me. Her parents lived much farther away from where she supposedly was. And the key word is supposedly. That didn't make sense. However, the explanation of not wanting to bother me was understandable, so I passed it off as nothing. The next morning, I got up early and made the long drive to her parents' house. When I arrived, they had breakfast waiting and we all sat down to eat. Other than for a few minor scrapes and bruises, Britt looked fine, but she was still very skittish from the accident. When I started asking questions about what happened, she said she'd tell me about it after breakfast. During the breakfast is where I first sensed something was off. Her mother seemed on edge and was asking me a lot of questions while her father was mostly silent. I also noticed her parents giving each other odd looks several times while we were eating. After we finished, I got up to help clear the table. Her parents said they'd handle it and told Britt and I to go relax and talk. Before we did, I made a pit stop. When I came out, her parents told me she was out in the solarium room located on the side of their house. So I'm imagining this solarium room is like a room with windows. As soon as I entered the space, I sensed something was seriously wrong. The first thing Britt said was she was so sorry for all of this. I told her not to worry about it. It was an accident, and I was just glad she wasn't seriously hurt. She then said she needed to tell me something and wanted me to promise to hear her out before I reacted. Now, a statement like that normally ends up being a negative. I said, of course, what is it? She then proceeds to tell me there was no business trip. I asked her what she meant. She said there was no business trip and she instead traveled to a different part of the state to meet up with an old friend, in quotations, he says. Not expecting this, my only response was, what? It was at that point when the tears started flowing and my suspicions were raised, but I still wasn't clear on what happened. Come on, my man, you had to have a pretty good clue at that point. I asked who this friend was. She continued crying with her head down, obviously not wanting to tell me. I continued asking, and eventually she gave me the friend's first name. I'll call him John. I responded, John, you secretly met a guy somewhere? I felt gutted as the reality that she cheated rushed over me. I asked her to tell me who he was. After taking time to catch her breath, she said he was a friend from college. I asked why she had never mentioned him before. That's a major red flag. So she's got this friend from college that she never mentioned. She said there was no need to mention him as everything between them was in the past and didn't matter. It obviously did matter if she risked everything to secretly meet with him. Through heavy crying, she said it wasn't like that. She said they dated during the final months of her sophomore year and into the following summer. That's when he transferred to a Division I school to play hockey. She said after leaving, they continued the relationship long distance for a few months until he broke up with her after meeting someone else. Oh boy, that's not good, because what it sounds like here is this woman really was in love with this ex, and then he just drops her for another woman. And in situations like that, what you're going to find is that woman is always going to have a place in her heart for that guy, no matter who she meets in the future. She said the experience destroyed her, and she blocked him out of her life after that and hadn't been in touch with him for years. She said a few weeks ago he called her out of the blue to apologize for how he ended things. I asked how he got her number, and she said she didn't know. Believe me, she knew full well how he got it. She's probably been in touch with this guy on and off over the years. They continued having conversations and exchanging texts that progressed to a point where they decided to meet up. Now listen to this. She said the only reason she did it was to get closure and pay him back for what he did to her. And the OP says, what? She claimed they didn't share a room and nothing happened between them. Oh, brother. She said his flight got delayed and he didn't even arrive until mid-morning Thursday, so they only spent the one day together. She admitted to spending the entire day with him, but swore nothing happened between them. Later, she did admit to them sharing a few hugs and kisses, but claimed they were initiated by him and she didn't reciprocate. Oh, the whole time I'm looking at her thinking, yeah, right, she must think I'm really stupid. She probably doesn't think you're stupid, but she probably thinks she's got you in the palm of her hand and you're just going to buy whatever she tells you based on how you've reacted to her in the past. She's probably thinking, yeah, my fiancé, he's a great guy, he's a nice guy. I'm going to explain this to him and he's going to accept it and we're going to go on and live happily ever after. I felt like screaming, but didn't want to create a scene. I stood up to break the moment and walked over to the glass wall looking out. She asked what I was doing and I told her I needed a minute to think. I stood there for a while looking out and got this overwhelming feeling to just get out of there. I opened the door and told her I was going outside to get some air. When I stepped outside, I noticed she had gotten up and walked back into the house. I used that moment to escape. I darted out to my car and drove away. A few minutes later, she frantically called asking where I went. I told her I was taking a drive to think about things. This wasn't true, as I was actually getting on the interstate heading back home. Over the next hour or so, she sent multiple texts and left a few voicemails asking when I'd be back, but I didn't respond. Eventually, I answered one of her calls and let her know I was on my way back home. By that point, I was already halfway there. She lost it and couldn't believe I left her like that. I told her I had heard enough and there wasn't anything else she could say that would make a difference. She asked what I was talking about and again swore nothing happened. She said she needed to explain everything and asked me to come back. I told her I wasn't coming back but would listen to what she had to say while I was driving. I knew doing this would delay her getting a ride home from her parents, which would give me time to get my stuff out of the apartment without her being there. She started off again insisting nothing happened. She said I had her word and she swore on it and offered to take a polygraph test to prove it. I told her I may be gullible, but I'm not stupid. I said there's no way a guy would travel across country to meet up with an old girlfriend at a hotel just to talk and share a few meals. The OP says there's no way that's all that happened, and unless she had verifiable proof otherwise, that's what I believed. I told her furthermore the mere fact she met up with him behind my back ended our relationship. Yes, absolutely. The mere fact that she's been communicating with this guy for weeks behind your back and then meets up with him behind your back and then lies to you about it, that's grounds right there to end things. He says, I broke up with her and let her know the engagement was off. OP, you did the right thing. She lost it and started screaming, telling me not to do this. She kept going on until I got tired of it and ended the call. She kept calling back, but I didn't answer. When I got to the apartment, I packed my clothes into 4 kitchen-sized trash bags and checked into an extended stay hotel across town. I didn't plan on staying there, but it was the only place that had available rooms. It worked out though, as I ended up living there for a couple months until I got another apartment. Well, if you're going to stay in a hotel for any extended period of time, it's best to get one of these kind of places because at least they have a kitchenette. The breakup wasn't easy, and as I stated up front, I still haven't fully recovered. She still insists to this day that nothing happened. She's gone even further, claiming the reason she met up with him was to get some payback for what he did to her back in college. She said all the calls and messages she exchanged with him were only to build up his hopes, only to dash them by making him travel across country so she could tell him she wasn't interested. She said telling him she was engaged and rejecting him gave her the closure she needed. I still don't believe her story. Even if I did, it wouldn't change anything as I no longer trust her. To me, this proves she has some sort of obsession with this guy, bordering on psychosis. Yeah, that's how I'm reading this whole thing. She's got some kind of unhealthy attraction to this guy. He says, I obviously never knew who she really was, but I do still miss the person I thought she was. Well, that's understandable. You were engaged to this woman after all. He says, I'm interested to see what everyone on here thinks about this. Would you have ended things like I did or given her another chance? Not that it's going to change anything. I'm just curious to see what people think. Oh, and by the way, she did end up admitting that the reason she confessed to me was because her parents made her do it. Take that into consideration before you reply. And that's the end of his story. So that's interesting because remember, she called her mother to come and get her. So she probably, I'm just guessing, told her parents that she was on some kind of business trip as well. So when she called her mother must have been surprised, saying, hey, where are you? And once they found out the whole story, they must have put pressure on her to confess. So what that tells me, this wasn't something she did out of guilt or out of the goodness of her heart. She did it because her parents forced her to do it. And now we're going to take a look at some of the comments he got back. But before we do that, I want to remind you, if you're liking what you've heard so far in this story, be sure to hit the like button right now. That will help out this channel tremendously and help get this video seen across the world. Also, I want to remind you, if you're on X, be sure to follow me on X at FindYourAlpha. And now let's take a look at some of those comments. The first one is from a woman. She says, yeah, I wouldn't accept her story either. If she wanted to get payback on the guy, she could have done that over the phone or through text. If I had gotten a call from someone like that, I would have told him thanks, but no thanks. I found someone better. Then I would have sent him a picture of me and my man and blocked his number. She went there and did exactly what you think she did. She's not being honest with you. Absolutely, and I agree with this woman. The next response is from a guy, and he has a little different take on things. He says, it's a tough call and not as simple as some on here are saying. It's likely those responding that way have never been through something like that, so it's easy for them to speak for someone else. He says, I've never been through that either, but I'm currently engaged and can only tell you how I think I would respond if I were in your shoes. I would seek counseling and try to see if we could work it out. I know what she told you seems far-fetched, but there is that possibility. I'll leave you with this thought. If something happened between them, wouldn't they still be together now? No, not necessarily, because maybe they did that just to hook up, and maybe they've been hooking up periodically over the years behind this guy's back. Did you ever think of that? And we're going to take a look at one more response from a guy. He says, consider it a blessing you found out before you married her, my friend. I found out my wife was still seeing an ex of hers while we were married. I discovered this the day of our 1-year anniversary, and like you, I moved out the same night. Oh, this poor guy. She begged, pleaded, and promised me the world, but I didn't budge and held my ground. I'm not going to lie and tell you it was easy because it messed me up for a few years until I got over it. You know, in all fairness to these guys, something like that would mess you up for a while. I don't know about a few years, but it would definitely be gnawing at you for quite a while. He says, that was many years ago and I've got a family now, but that experience changed me forever. And I totally understand why. So that's some of the feedback that he received. And my take on this whole thing is, the whole reason that she went down there was to meet up with this guy and to hook up with this guy. And believe me, something happened. I don't believe her story one bit. There's no way, just like this guy said, that this guy traveled across country, spent all that money just to go there and meet with her to talk and have a few meals. No way. No way that happened. I think she's really in love with this guy, or she's enamored with this guy and just can't get enough of him. I think this guy is her first choice and she's obsessed with him, and she will take big risks to get with him, as she did in this case. So based on that, I think the OP in this situation handled things just right. And now I want to take a look at what I think are some of the morals of the story. The first one: if you're in a relationship, you shouldn't be communicating with your exes. That goes for women and that goes for men. Those people should be out of your life. You should not be in touch with them. The only exception to that would be if you had kids with someone. Then of course you'd have to be in communication with them for coordination purposes. But outside of that, there should be no contact with your exes. Next, the best revenge is living a great life. So let's assume for 1 minute that this woman was telling the truth, and the whole reason why she did that was just to get some retribution on this guy, to make him waste all that money and all that time to fly across the country, thinking that something was going to happen between them, only to have her reject him and send him away with nothing. Let's just assume that. Why do that? The best way to get revenge on someone is by living a great life. What that tells me is a person that would do something like that is obsessed with the other person, and that obsession is very unhealthy. Next, once broken, trust may never be fully rebuilt. And I've said this on multiple videos. My opinion is it can't be fully rebuilt. No matter what they do for you, no matter what they tell you, no matter what access they give you to all of their devices, it's not going to matter. That trust is never going to get back to where it was before. And as a result, without trust, there is no relationship. And finally, if you're going to get into a relationship, you must prepare and protect yourself mentally, physically, and financially for the potential outcome that it may end, and it may end badly. Most guys do not do that. They don't understand the laws of their state. They don't understand the downsides. They're in love and they think it's going to last like that forever. And we all know, unfortunately, that in today's modern age, over 50% of the marriages out there, well over 50% the last time I looked, end in divorce. So those are my thoughts, and now I want to hear from you. What did you think of this story, and how do you think this guy handled the situation? Do you believe this woman that the whole reason why she did all this with this elaborate plan was just to get some payback on her ex? Or do you believe, like I do, that something actually went on there? Would you have given her a second chance? Or would you have ended things just like the OP did? Tell us about it in the comments. Also be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to this channel, follow me on X, and I will talk to you on the next one.